Hello, Facebook. Good afternoon or good evening. I guess it's evening. It is 7 o'clock. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Money School with LaShawn Holland. I appreciate your time today. And I want to talk about some things that I have learned to be true, that I know to be true. And for the past several weeks, we've been talking about Black Wall Street 2.0 and creating that and what it looks like and, why we should do it and who should participate. And, we've been talking a lot about just strengthening the economic positioning of African Americans. And I think it's important. I don't think we should get back down off of this horse of the social change that's going on, taking place in the United States of America. I think we need to keep our foot on racism. We need to keep our foot on poverty. We need to keep our foot on injustice and making sure that we have reform in our justice system. And so these are all the things that I think, are very important during this time. What I know to be true is that all of those things are dependent upon our financial sovereignty. And so I think it's important that, we do whatever we can to be able to increase. If the Bible says above all, I wish that thou will prosper and be in health even as your soul prospers. If you're not prospering in your pocket, then you need to figure out, what do I need to do to prosper in my soul? And so I believe that I personally have a moral obligation to change my family from generation to generation, and I'm doing everything in my power to do just that. And so I think that, even when in your business or in my business, and we all have a moral obligation to change your family. We all have a moral obligation to help change society. Hi Martin, how are you? Hi Denise, how are you? I can actually see your names up on the big screen now. And so if you have questions, you can go ahead. Hey Wanda, how are you, beautiful? I can actually look over and see what everybody is saying. Hey babe, I kind of like this. Hey niece, Tashana and Deandra. Okay, I can't spend the whole time talking and saying hi to everybody, but I'm really excited. This is the first time we're doing this. But anyway, I was thinking, this past weekend that the wisest, and actually I was listening to someone talk about this, that the wisest and wealthiest man that ever lived, that ever walked the face of the earth, that was ever alive, said that, his net worth would be worth trillions of dollars right now. He would be a multi-trillionaire. And so he said that if you have something good, you have a moral obligation to sell it to as many people as possible. And so that's Proverbs 11:26. If you want to know, I actually used to give it out for people to frame at our live event that we had. But it says, people curse the woman. I changed it to fit at that particular time Wealthy Women Rock, but I have it up in my office, and it says, people curse the woman who hoards grain, but blessings crown her who is willing to sell. I made it feminine because at that time that was all that was in my audience. And so, but most people think that selling is hard because they don't believe that selling is something that's good for people. And, but what Solomon said is that you have a moral obligation. If you know something, if you have a moral obligation, if you have talents and you have abilities and you have gifts, you have a moral obligation to help someone else out. And so I'm better off because someone sold me their real estate program. I am better off because someone sold me their mastermind. I am better off because someone sold me their holistic approach to what did I used to suffer with, babe? Adrenal fatigue. I am better off because I use essential oils. I am better off because of those things. And we really need to transform our mindset about doing business. If we're talking about Black Wall Street, you can't be afraid to talk about money. And I noticed that in our culture, it's something that's not openly discussed with family members. It's not openly discussed with husband and wives. It's not openly discussed in our communities. And so we don't normally take to things that we're confused about. And so I try my best to really make money easy and talk about all the things that affect us while we're not breaking through financially. And so, I don't want people to buy into the lie that, the government tries to say, put on us, thinking that selling is bad. People will say that selling is bad. People hate, multi-level marketing. And listen, I know people who are making millions of dollars in it. And, I am better off. Selling Mary Kay helped me get through college. I sold Mary Kay to help pay my college tuition. I sold Mary Kay when I first got married to put food on the table and, to pay my kids' babysitters. They got paid because I knew when I picked those pink cases up in the morning that I could not come home until I sold 13 lipsticks because I needed to be able to pay Miss Bev. So selling is not a bad thing. It is how you transform your life. And so I want to teach a little bit about that today. But the best chance that you have at creating wealth is getting a coach, getting a mentor, getting inside of a mastermind. $1 million is great, but 10 million is better all day long. And so it's 10 times better. And so I wanted to share some things with you today that would help you with your mindset. And I have a question. Hopefully you got your pen and paper. Hopefully you have your iPads. You have something to be able to take notes with. Yes, Sabrina says, I've had success with MLM as well. Yeah, one of my closest friends now, she's helping people change lives all over the world, especially in the Caribbean through her MLM. And so I don't have a problem with it. But what does an apple tree have to do in order for it to bear apples? What does an apple tree have to do in order for it to bear apples? I want you guys to talk to me. I'm going to give you the answer because I don't have time to wait, but it just has to be a tree. You just have to be who you are. See, in life, you don't get what you want. You get what you are. And so everything reproduces after its own kind. You will never see an apple tree producing oranges. You'll never see an orange tree produce apples. You'll never see a lemon tree, or an avocado tree produce cherries. They produce after their own kind. And so there are 4 different kinds of people that exist in the world. And so one of the reasons people don't, take you up on you creating Black Wall Street in your world or their world is because they fall into one of these 4 categories. You have what's called free people, FREEPLE, free people. And these are people who want everything for free. And if you are a part of the free people, or free people, thank you, babe, free people, you will never be able to sell anyone anything because it's against what you internally believe. It's where you have your internal conflict. And until you get rid of those internal conflicts about being sold to, you'll never be able to create Black Wall Street 2.0 in your life. The second type of people is cheapo people. Cheapo people. Cheap people, or people, that want everything. They'll want anything as long as it's cheap or discounted. They go through life telling themselves over and over and over again that they can't afford it. And since they believe that they can't afford something, they think that other people can't afford it too. That's why people struggle with raising prices on their services or raising prices for their products or their goods. They struggle because in their mind, it's a mindset thing. In their mind, they believe since they can't afford something, other people won't be able to afford it either. And so you can't police people's pockets. I've had people join our programs that have told me afterwards, I didn't have an idea of how I was going to be able to pay for this. In particular, we're talking about a program called Velocity. They didn't know how they was going to be able to pay for Velocity, yet they moved in spite of. And one young lady who's in this round of Velocity was like, look, I've been able to pay off all my credit card debt and still pay my obligation for the program on time. And so she didn't fit into the free people or the cheaper people category. And so, I just wanted to destroy that myth of I can't afford it. People don't buy the things that they can't afford. People buy the things that they want the most. I'm going to say that again. People don't buy things that they can't afford. People buy things that they want the most. And so do you want to change your family's life? You know, do you want to take epic, world-class vacations? There's nothing like it. You know, do you want to impact the world in a great way? And then what you have to do is stop being a part of the free people tribe or the cheaper people tribe. And, you know, and level up so you can learn how to use your mouth and your mind to create wealth that your family deserves and the wealth that you desire. That's how we create Black Wall Street 2.0, and we begin to change our society. You know, does that make sense to everyone? Yes, Felicia, people don't buy the things that they can't afford. They buy the things that they want the most. And so that's true. And so here's the reality about cheaper people that most people don't realize. The only thing that perpetuates poverty, listen to me, the only thing that perpetuates poverty is the expectation or the focus on poverty. And so cheaper people, I'm saying cheaper people, I'm saying it right, and freeper people, that's a tongue tire, but they ask the wrong questions. And so they're constantly asking themselves, you know, what happens if it doesn't work? And that's the wrong question that you should be asking yourself. You know, see, you already know what you already know, which is doing what you're doing right now, which is not working. And so you're asking the wrong questions. The real question that you need to ask yourself is, what if this works? You know, what if that real estate program, because I desperately want to become a real estate investor, what happens if it really does work? What happens if Born to Multiply, you know, bankable purpose business success system really does work? What happens if velocity really does work? I'll tell you what happens. You start adding commas and zeros to your bank account. That's what you start to do, and you start to open up other avenues to be attractive to wealth. And so that's really important. You know, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. Now, I didn't miss any meals, and so I don't want to paint that picture, but you know, the size of my families were very different. My mother's side of her family, we were a middle class family. With my father's side of the family, they weren't. They were poor. Like my father's mother, my paternal grandmother, didn't have any running water in her house. And so I know what it's like to, you know, I used to spend my summers there. I used to spend my weekends there sometime. And so I know what it's like to really see and experience, you know, the different aspects of poverty. And so, you know, when I got married, there was nothing that I wouldn't do to change my family's life. Nothing. I still feel that way. And so I didn't want my kids to grow up experiencing lack and scarcity. And so, you know, vacationing on a level 10, you know, is it worth it? Yes, it's worth it. You know, for me, it's worth it. For me, it's worth it. So my kids see a different part of life. And so I don't ask the questions, what if it doesn't work? When there's something that I want to do, I ask the question, what if it does work? You know, if this, you know, is going to change my life in the greatest way possible. I even remember when my son was trying to decide on a school. He got offers from D1 schools. He used to play football for almost 40 different schools. And so I remember standing in the middle of the field, and I wasn't really feeling this particular school at the time. And then he came to me and he used the words that I raised him on back at me again. And he was like, Mom, look around. You taught us if we wanted to do something, find the biggest way possible to do it and then do it. And so we looked around and he was like, Mom, look at this. This is a 107,000 seat, you know, stadium. This is one of the biggest ways to do what I want to do, you know, and I couldn't argue with that. What am I going to say after that? I taught him that all his life, you know, find a way or make a way and find the best way possible and go after it, because vision makes the decision, not money. I keep that. It's right behind me on my shelf. I keep it up there all the time. Vision makes the decision, not money. And so I want people to see this, that the very first temptation, most people don't even read this in the Bible and think about it this way, but You know, when I said the expectation of poverty and they focus on poverty, it just creates more poverty. And so the very first temptation in the history of the world started in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. And so the very first temptation, you know, was the temptation to focus on lack, to focus on what they didn't have, to focus on poverty. And so God, when you look at the story, I'm not going to read it, but God told Adam and Eve of every tree, every tree you may freely eat. But, you know, the question, every and freely, those are abundant words. They're not lack words. And so these are abundant words. He says the tree of knowledge and good and evil, don't eat off of that tree. It was only one tree that was centered in the middle of the Garden of Eden that he told them not to eat off. One. It was just one tree. So they had everything for free that they could possibly eat as much as they wanted, you know, and this means that they had to pass by all the other trees, every tree that they could freely eat off of, to go to the one that they couldn't touch, the lack that was in the center of the garden. And so, when you look at that, you see how they focused on lack. They focused on what they didn't have the ability to eat from that tree. And then when the devil came slithering along, you know, he changed his words around and he added the word not, which was not anything that God has said. It's in Genesis, the 3rd chapter. And so God, you know, he was like, hey, didn't he indeed say you shall not eat of every tree? He didn't say that. He says you can eat of every tree except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And so he did not say that you can't eat of every tree. And so, and then Eve considered it. She thought about it. And then she took away 2 more words that God didn't say. And so, but I want you to see this, that Adam and Eve had to walk past all their abundance just to get to lack. And so when we never consider the talents that God placed on the inside of us, the treasures that we have, the internal assets that God placed in us, when we don't consider our talents, when we don't consider our abilities, when we don't consider our gifts, we will never be able to create Black Wall Street 2.0 in our lives. And so again, they had to walk past all of the abundance that God has set before them. God has set abundance on the inside of you. You have talents, you have abilities, you have gifts. That is called bankable purpose. You've been given purpose. You've been given something that you can create nothing with. You can take nothing and create something. This is what I'm trying to say. So God, that's when the Bible says, I've given you the power to create wealth. He's given you everything you need on the inside of you. But every day when we wake up, we walk past all of the abundances he's given us. We walk past every talent, every gift, every ability that he's given us. And we tend to focus on the lack, the things that we don't have in our life. And so here is how crazy this is. The one tree that was in the middle of the garden means that they had to pass by all of the other abundance. And so we don't look at that scripture, that passage of scripture in that way, but that's what we do when we focus on lack, when we focus on the things that we don't have, we focus on the things that we can't afford, and what you focus on tends to grow. What you give your attention to the most will manifest in your life. And so that's important that we just begin to change our focus. And so listen, abundance and lack were both in the garden. Abundance and lack is present in everybody's life, but you get what you focus on the most. You get in life what you focus on the most. And so the third type of people that exists is fee people. And so fee people are... feeble people are people who are willing to pay a fee. And so if you're willing to pay a fee, like the people that show up every year at Wealthy Revolution Live, they're willing to pay a fee to get inside the room. We know at least that you are a feeble people. You're part of the feeble people tribe. But then the fourth one is the preeble people. And so preeble people means premium people, or people who are willing to pay a premium for the things that they get. And so if you want to transform your life, you have to train your mindset to be a preeble people. Listen, you are willing to give premium. You're willing to develop your talents and your abilities and your gifts so that you can position yourself to be able to attract the wealth and abundance that's in your life. And so these are 4 kinds of people. Don't forget, you get what you are, not what you want. You get what you are, not what you want. And so that's important. You have the ability to choose, to be a different person. You don't have to stay in Free for People all your life. You don't have to be a part of that tribe. You don't have to be a part of the Cheapo People tribe. You have the ability to choose. And so that's why in the Bible, he says, listen, I set before you life and death. Choose life. Listen, every week when I come on this money school, I'm giving you an opportunity to choose life. And so when you believe it, you can attract it. If you don't make the transition, you can't help others make the transition. And so you have to go there to get other people to come there too. That's why it's important that you do transform your mindset so you can go back and help your family, so you can go back and help your friends, so you can go back and help your coworkers or whoever else that is called to come across your path. You're there to help them. And so there are laws in the universe that works. The Bible talks about it. There's a positive and there's negative in everything in the world. There are 2 sides to every single thing. And that's called the law of polarity. You got the North Pole, you got the South Pole. You got positive energy, you have negative energy. And so one of the laws, the law of momentum, means that an object in motion will continue in motion until it's acted upon by outside force. And so we used to demonstrate this at our live events so people can see, because they don't understand that when you are in motion, clarity comes to you when you're in motion. It's when you stop. You join a program. You don't go past the first module, but you never get the acceleration that you could get because you're not focusing on the abundance. Listen, abundance and lack is always present. You get what you focus on the most. That's why it's important. I've been on this for almost 3 decades. It has been a focus. I have spent 3 decades. It doesn't take you 3 decades to do it because I know the shortcuts, right? And so again, the laws of momentum. And so when you look at the different laws, there's a law that's called the law of advancement. And how many of you would like to advance? How many of you would like to advance? Write that down. The law of advancement works like this. It's a simple principle, and when you hear this, you will instantly know that it's true in your life. In nature, before anything can go up, it has to go down. And so you can't find an exception to that. It still has to go down underground. Some may not be as deep. I remember when we had our house built, my grandfather came in and he stood in my living room, and I have this huge bay window that probably takes up just about almost half of the wall. And he was looking out and he starts pointing out the pine trees that we have in our woods out here. And he was like, look, you need to get those removed because their roots grow, but their roots don't grow deep. Not like an oak tree. And so you find people that some people will be superficial. They don't have deep roots to them. They have surface roots. And so those are not the ones that you want to depend to come along with you, because the first wind, the first storm that come, they can topple over. That's not who you want in your tribe. But when you look at it, if you take a seed, the seed is thinking, I want to become a tree. When you take a watermelon seed, the seed is thinking, I want to become a watermelon. When you take a cherry tree, the seed is thinking, a seed of a cherry, it is thinking, I want to become a cherry tree. But before the little bitty seed, I wish I would have got an apple seed out, but before the little bitty seed can grow up to be a big, strong tree, what does it have to do first? Grow roots. Roots grow in which direction? They grow down. And so the roots that have to go down into the ground, it has to be willing to cease being a seed. You have to be willing to cease being broke. Cease not having enough. Cease not living the life that you desire to live. A seed has to stop being a seed before it can become a tree. And that takes willingness for you to do it. And so you have to be willing not to keep being seeds all your life. If you want to have an abundant life, you must be willing to stop being what you have been so you can become who you want to be. And so I'll say that again, in order for you to become everything that you can become, you have to be willing to cease being what you have been so that you can become all that you can be. You can become all of the purpose that God intended for you to be. You can experience life to the fullest the way that He wants you to fulfill it. And so the roots go down into the ground, the seed dies, but what happens after that? The tree begins to sprout. And so again, you have to be willing to cease being who you are. And so that's important. The seed it's no longer a seed. It gets in the ground, it develops a root system, and it grows up and it becomes a tree. And so if there's a tree growing on the side of a cliff, you guys know I like eagles. I posted a story recently about an eagle, which you'll have to find the post, but it's why, I'm glad I chose the husband that I chose. So he's been a great father to my kids. But, if you say a tree grows on the side of a cliff, right? And a mama and a daddy eagle are flying by. I don't know the sound that eagles make. I'm pretty sure that I was going to say bark, bark, but that's a chicken. That's not an eagle. But
I don't even know if that's a chicken.
Yeah, Miles says he doesn't know if that's a chicken. But one day you see a mom and a daddy eagle fly by, and they look over and they like that tree that's on the edge of the cliff, and they're like, hey, why don't we build a nest there so we can have our eaglets in that nest on that side of the tree. And so they build a nest, the eaglets are born, and every day the mom and daddy, they go off and they fly so they can find food to be able to feed the eaglet, right? I'm going somewhere with this story. And so they come back with the food, and the eagles are growing. They start to grow up, and then the eagles get to a point where they want to spread their wings. And so one day the mama eagle decides to put the eagle on her back. This is really what happens in nature. I love studying how eagles are. The mama eagle puts the eagle on his back, and then she flies really high up. She soars, and she drops the eagle, and the eaglet. And she soars down behind him, falling, and goes in to catch them on her back right before they hit the ground. And she does this day after day, day in and day out, until that eagle on the way falling down one day spreads its wings out and begins to fly on its own. Eagles are not afraid to fall down because they understand in order for you to go up, you have to go down first, just like the seed of a tree. The roots have to go deep first before they can go up. And so, that mama eagle, she takes them, she drops them, and then, one day the eagle begins to fly. The eagle learned how to fly by falling, not by staying safe in the nest on the side of a cliff. And so even, an eagle, before it goes up, has to go down. But here's what human beings do. This is what we do. We live in a nest called the circle of sameness, and we're afraid to leave our communities. We're afraid to leave our circle of being average. We live in the nest that's called the circle of sameness. And so when it's our turn to learn to fly, we are afraid of failing. So all humans, can fly. We have that ability to soar, as high as we can. But do all humans fly as high as they can? No. Because we have a choice. God's given us a choice. Eagles don't have a choice. There is no other creation that was created by God that He gave the ability to choose to. Human beings are the only ones that walk this earth that has the ability to choose. Eagles don't have a choice of whether they can fly. And so what what percentage of eagles learn how to fly? 100%. Because they don't have a choice. And so what percentage of people learn to max out their potential? Not enough. And so, when we look at the anticipation of impact, that is what we're afraid of when we think about falling. And so, we're afraid of the impact of the possibility of hitting the ground. People say, I'm afraid of falling. I'm afraid of failing in business. You're afraid that you're going to hit the ground. But listen, so when we're all falling, instead of allowing the wind to catch our wings, we grab onto the lowest branch that we can find in a tree that we're falling to. And then we climb back up and we pitch there in the circle of sameness with everybody else. That's what we do. And so you say, I'm not ready yet. You're not ready to leave average. You're not ready to leave the same circle of sameness so you can grow to your potential, but you say you want it. You say you want abundance. You say you want to build wealth, but you're still stuck in the nest of sameness. And so, you can't be afraid to go down. So when we're failing, instead of allowing the wind to catch our wings, we grab onto all the things that keep us stuck. We hold on to our limited mindsets in the way that we think. We stay inside of our comfort zones, and then we nest and live out the rest of our lives inside of our comfort zones. And so, there's a story I remember even in my book that I talk about where my grandmother came to me while she was dying of cancer, and she asked me, what's your biggest dream? And she began to talk to me about the importance of going after your dreams, not allowing your dreams to die with you. And that was her biggest regret, that she never went after her dreams. And so before people build a building, they have to dig a hole in the ground first. They got to lay the foundation down deep. When we were building this house, I watched them dig into the earth and make it as large as I wanted it. And then they poured the foundation to be able to help what was being built on top of the ground. If you never take the time to build the right foundation, you won't create Black Wall Street 2.0 in your life. And so again, a seed has to go into the ground and stop being a seed. If an airplane has flaps that goes down to be able to help it stop, anything that goes up has to come down. If the stock market goes up, then guess what? Eventually there are going to be days when it comes down. And so if you are pretending that you want your income to go up and you're not willing to allow your bank balance to go down, you are kidding yourself. If you are serious about advancing, then make a decision now. If you don't have to wait until a wealthy revolution to get started to learn how to become a money master, you don't have to wait until then. And so you can start with your wealth plan. You can start getting a prosperity plan. You can make that decision now. And I want to teach you, before I go, I'm going to teach you about your 2 highest expenses, because I think this is important for people to learn. And so I want you to get a pen, get a paper, grab your iPad, because I want you to write down 2 different things, okay? And so I want you to answer these 2 questions that I am about to ask you. They're very important. Write a 1, a line, a 2, a line, and then answer this question for me. What are your 2 biggest expenses? What are your 2 biggest expenses in life? Come on, I want to see you write that down. What do y'all think your 2 biggest expenses in life are? What are your 2 biggest expenses? Okay, I don't see anything coming up.
I see you just getting it. Just a delay.
Okay. What are your 2 biggest expenses in life? Talk to me. What do you think your 2 biggest expenses in life are? Well, I'm actually going to help you guys out. Okay, I see Don says mortgage. Okay. That could be a big expense, but it's not one of the two biggest expenses. House rent, salon rent, you know, someone else says house, mortgage, home, rent, Jeep payment.
Taxes and taxes.
Adrian, you don't count because you've been hanging around me way too long. So you can't answer. Yes, car payment. Somebody says time shares. Okay, and so I'm going to give you the second expense first. And most people don't, hey, it went by really, really quick, but the pastor was on it. I didn't see who the name was, but he was on it. But, you know, your two biggest expenses, I'm going to give you the second one first. The second biggest expense is actually taxes. And so if you are a W-2 wage earner, you're at the 51%. And so, you know, if every dollar that you make is in taxes, people's like, no, I'm in the 22% tax bracket. I'm in the 30% tax bracket. Listen, you're in the 51% tax bracket. And so 51 cents out of every dollar you're paying in taxes. It's a sneak attack that they have on you. You're taxed when you earn money. That's called the income tax. You are taxed when you buy something. That's called the sales tax. You know, that's double taxation on the same thing, the same money. And then they tax you when you sell something and you make a little money off of that you bought. You know, you made more money off of it than what you paid for. That's called capital gains. Now you got to pay a capital gains tax. And so they tax you when you own property. That's called a property tax. They tax you when you die. That's called an estate tax or a death tax. And so when you start to look at all of these things, taxes become your largest expense, one of your second largest expense in life. And so it's important for us to start knowing this, because part of building wealth is figuring out how you can lower your tax liability so you can keep more money in your pocket. And so when you look at it this way, you know, you pay 51%. How many of you would like to reduce the amount that you pay in taxes? Or how many of you would just like to have a bigger 49% of your taxes? You know, because taxes, paying that 51%, if I had to pay it on 10 million is, you know, it's still okay. But when I have to pay it on 80,000, it's not okay. You know, and when you start to look at it, that's why you deserve at least a $10 million vision. You know, and so at least, and so I'm going to tell you what your next biggest expense is in life. Your next biggest expense, and someone said it, and it's true, is ignorance. Ignorance about how to make $10 million. Ignorance about how to make $1 million. Ignorance on how to make, you know, whatever the number is, you fill that in. You know, and this is serious. And so I want everyone to write this down on a piece of paper. How much money did you make last year? How much money did you make last year? Whatever that number is, nobody's going to see it but you. I'm not going to ask you to tell me what it is. How much money did you make last year? And so I'll give you an example, right? Let's do an example. Say if you're a part of the relatively high income earners in the United States of America, and last year you made about $80,000. And so let's say that for some reason you didn't have that much time to get inside of the Velocity Mastermind or any other income accelerating program that someone may have, and you didn't have time. You didn't hit that $1 million mark. And I say that because, yes, I have several clients that have hit, you know, the 7-figure club. And so let's say you subtract that $80,000 from 1 million, right? Let's say that, you know, when you look at subtracting $80,000 from $1 million, you know, that leaves you with $920,000. This is your largest expense. It's called the ignorance tax. I want to let that sink in. And so that's how much you paid life last year for not knowing how to make $1 million. That's how much You paid life. Huh?
The amount.
$920,000 is called the ignorance tax. It is how much you pay life for not knowing how to make $1 million. And so if you add another zero onto that, and let's say 10 million was your goal, and you didn't know how to, you didn't do anything, you didn't go out and get a coach, a mentor to do it. If 10 million is your number and you subtract that $80,000 that you did make, that's $9,920,000 in an ignorance expense that you paid life because you weren't willing to make the choice to do something different. And so before we end, I have one more question, and it's this. Do I want to pay life another $920,000 or $9,920,000 next year like I did last year? Do I want to continue for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years paying the ignorance tax? Because I'm not willing to fly. I'm not willing to spread my wings to fly. I'm not upselling you on anything today. I just want you to understand that there is a need. If you want to create Black Wall Street 2.0, there is a need for you to learn how to stretch your wings and go down before you go up. We cannot be afraid of going down. We cannot be afraid of failing. Some of my greatest transformation moments came when I made mistakes in business. And I learned from those mistakes. I teach my kids all the time, you either win or you learn, but you cannot be afraid to lose. You cannot be afraid to lose. It's how you win. Most people don't make an investment because what happens if I lose my money? Well, what happens if you make money? What happens if you make money? We have to learn how to transform our thinking. And so ignorance is a poverty tax. Ignorance is a poverty tax. And so if your answer is no, then, you don't have to wait until Wealthy Revolution Live. Go to LaShawnHolland.com. Look at the Born to Multiply program. That is a program that has value of almost $39,000 that is only $3,000. When you look at what you get out of that program, listen, I've had people that had started doing this quarantine that was furloughed from their jobs, or they weren't working and weren't getting paid. They made more money in their side business than if they were working. I know it's possible. But in order for you to change your life, you have to be willing to cease being a seed so that you can become a tree. That's all I got for you tonight. I look forward to seeing you on Monday. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.